Last of Us is really interesting. There the most obvious thing for me is to look at zombies from a kind of environmental or eco-critical perspective, in the sense that a common narrative in sort of environmental fiction is sort of the revenge of nature or the rising up of nature. That mankind for what it does to the environment. There's lots of narratives of where nature is sort of depicted as coming back to get them. And that's very much an element in The Last of Us with the cordyceps virus. It's very much sort of nature kind of in revolt against us. But also, as I think I've shown kind of the very opening sequence from The Last of Us where it's on like a talk show and you've got two scientists there talking about what they fear the most. And there's the one that says he fears fungi, which number one, I did not need a new thing to fear in my life until I watched that episode. I'm like, oh, okay. So now I got to be afraid of the mushrooms that are growing in my yard. But it also serves the purpose of, besides the revolt of nature, also a common theme in zombies and monsters more generally is the way in which they speak to the limits of what we create or do being in our control. If I remember correctly, the cordyceps virus is something that humankind sort of created or cultivated or is ultimately, was experimenting on and sort of got out. And that sort of nature escaping mankind's control, is something I think Last of Us is very much tapping into. And you see that in all kinds of popular culture. I always use Jurassic Park as that example, where instead of zombies you have dinosaurs running around. But there's the line from Jeff Goldblum's character, in figuring out whether or not they could bring the dinosaurs back, nobody thought about whether they should. And the resounding answer in Jurassic Park is you should not. And I think Last of Us is doing something similar there in terms of both kind of that revolt of nature narrative, but also that narrative of, the things that we create are not entirely in our control, which again, you see in, monsters, you see that with, I mean, that's the narrative of Frankenstein, at least in part. You can see that in things like the atomic bomb as well, that, we mankind has a habit of creating things without fully thinking through the consequences of creating them. So that's very much what I see sort of going on with The Last of Us, is that revolt of nature slash, science and technology not really being entirely in our control, even as we're the ones creating things.